Have you ever noticed that we reward attention to detail and perfection, yet we struggle with perfectionism? When is striving for perfection holding us back, and when should we aim for excellence? I'm Ivana Taylor. I'm the publisher of DIY Marketers and the host of Bizapalooza Chat, and today we're going to talk about how to go from good enough to great without losing our minds or ourselves in the process. Our guest today will help us get a clear understanding of how to manage our expectations of ourselves and of others. Carrie Maslin is the co-founder and the managing partner of Gilroy Associates, a consulting firm that helps organizations accelerate their business growth. Carrie, welcome to Bizapalooza Chat. I'm so happy to have you with us.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart as a recovering perfectionist. So thank you.
Well, it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I believe that I suck at being a perfectionist. So there you go.
Probably really a good thing to not be great at. And I think that's going to be the topic of what we talk about over the next few minutes.
Exactly. So, as I've been doing some research, as I do for these things, I jump online and I see what folks are talking about. One of the things I noticed is that most of the articles out there target exactly what you're talking about. This idea of giving ourselves a break from striving for perfection. And yet, what I've noticed, Carrie, is that we reward attention to detail and perfection. When I think about Apple products and Steve Jobs saying, you have to paint the whole thing even though people can't see it, right? That whole thing of like getting it right. Talk about that. Clear it up for me.
Well, I'm not sure I can clear it up for you, but I'll give you my point of view. So my point of view is that we look at so many symbols and icons of the world around us, whether it's fashion or sports or business, and we see perfection. When we see the people who are these superstars, we believe that they're perfect. But what we don't recognize is that that's what we're choosing to see. That's how they're choosing to portray themselves. And I think with social media, it's even more difficult to discern what's really happening, because with all of the ability for people to curate what they want, they are able to portray just this perfect sense of who they are. So it's really incumbent upon us to realize that these people that we revere, whether it is a coworker or a parent or a celebrity, they're all human. We're all humans. And my definition of being human is that we are perfectly imperfect. And so we need to give ourselves a break and say, you know what? We all share, maybe not common challenges, but we all have challenges. We all have flaws. We are all struggling with different things. And so I know that you've chosen a clever title for today's talk. I think it's a play on Jim Collins' From Good to Great. And I would challenge our participants and our listeners to reverse that and really try to embrace, how do you move from perfection to good enough? And for those of us that are who are type A personalities, it's a little bit harder than maybe for others. But after many years in the industry, I've learned that it's really the only way to keep our sanity, is to know when to accept that good enough is good enough, and that perfection isn't always the best answer.
I like that much better. I was thinking about that myself as I was putting this up. I was like, I think we're kind of talking about the reverse here. But again, I continue to be stuck. And I think the reason that I'm stuck on this idea of perfection and how we revere and reward what, as you say, we perceive as perfection is, it kind of can hold us back somehow. And maybe we need to redefine what perfection means exactly. What is it that we are seeing in others, because you notice that truly the people we revere, and I know I'm talking about celebrities quite a bit, but it applies. I know that when I look at my Facebook stream, there are people in my area of business, so to speak, and in my area of expertise, I look up to people and I think to myself, oh, How did they think of that? And the part that we don't see is how much they struggle inside to get to that very thing that we all admire, and sometimes to their own detriment. So what is it, or maybe I should ask, that striving for perfection, psychologists say, holds us back? How does it hold us back exactly? What's going on?
So I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist, but I have my own theories, which are that, first of all, when we strive for perfection, we might be putting up some barriers that would prevent us from even trying. So if we said, I really think I might want to be an entrepreneur, but I might not be the perfect one, I'm not going to take that chance. Or I think I can get this customer to buy from me, but maybe there's a better or more perfect vendor that they should work with, so I'm not going to try. So to me, I think the whole aura of perfection can stop us from ever getting started. And I think that's a very dangerous trap to fall into. I think on a more resource-driven angle, striving for perfection requires energy. And so I think about myself when I was a younger salesperson, and I would prepare for a sales call, and I would literally have stacks of paper all over the floor of my office. What are the thousands of questions that they could possibly ask? Who are my hundreds of competitors? And let me learn everything about every one of them. What are all of the contingency plans I need to prepare for? And so that energy meant that I was spending all of that on a customer call, didn't leave any more energy for any other strategic thinking, for myself, for my family. And then I would say, just similar to energy, the sheer time that it takes for us when we strive for perfection, that is even, I think, more finite resource than energy. And so the combination of this fear of failure, the energy and the time, I think, again, we have to say, maybe there's a better way to spend our time. Maybe there's a better way to spend our energy. Maybe instead of thinking of 1,000 questions a customer could ask, let's think of the 3 that they most likely will. So literally, it took a friend tapping me on the shoulder and saying, you know, you're doing a great job with this one call, but while you're preparing for that one, the rest of us are going on 10. So how do you get faster? How can you not make perfection be the end game, but performance? And so whether you want to take a quote from Voltaire or Confucius or Churchill, you've got to keep in mind, you know, that the big saying is perfection can be the enemy of progress. And that's really, it took a friend to point out to me that perfection probably wasn't the right goal for me. And I would posit that that's probably not necessarily a healthy goal for a lot of us in every situation either.
Oh, that's such a great explanation, because I think all of us can see ourselves in that. And that makes me think about prioritizing. Now, one of the questions that we'll be talking about on the chat is, if you could be perfect at one thing, what would it be? And I think that's speaking to this idea of prioritizing. How do you pick exactly where you should aim for excellence?
That's a really good question. And I love the fact that you're using the word excellence instead of perfection, because I think that when we think good enough, we think, oh, that's not really good enough. But good enough still means I can stand proudly behind what I'm putting my name on. I'm still delivering a quality product or project or outcome. I'm just not going crazy in the working up to it. So to me, I think that you can, it's going to depend depending on where you are in your life. There's so many factors that I don't think there's one size fits all answer, but I do think it's incumbent on each of us to figure out where, when, and how can we let go of that need to be perfect and fit in a good enough response. One of my partner in business, Kevin Gilroy, maybe a long time ago now, maybe even 20 years ago, had a flyer printed up for all of us, and with a quote on it, which was high speed, near perfect. And I still look at that because it reminds me, don't get bogged down when you don't need to. There are some times where you need to go farther than others, but try to constantly keep that high speed, near perfect mantra front and center, so you know when can you be good enough, when it's good enough.
That's my question, Carrie. How can you know if you, how, I mean, speaking for yourself, especially for, unfortunately, I tend to hit good enough probably a little too soon.
Oh, I don't think that's bad though, because I think that you've been able to make progress. So to me, I think that when you, for me, some of my things that I look for is, am I bumping into deadlines? Am I doing so much work that I'm going to potentially miss a deadline? Am I putting in an extra 100 hours or doubling, I could go for another week on this, but it's not going to give me 100% better outcome. So it's a personal equation to solve of what is that right balance between getting something done in the right time frame, in an adequate time frame, and delivering a quality product. Oh, by the way, wouldn't it be great if at the end of the day, we still have energy left over for ourselves? I mean, I think of the people, so many people that I work with, including how I used to be, where you work so late, then you don't take a walk at night, you don't go to the gym, you don't eat right. You've got to prioritize yourself. And I think so many of us prioritize work over ourselves. And I think that's a big part of figuring out is, do we have to be a perfectionist at everything? No, we really do need to be a perfectionist, I think, at taking care of ourselves. Because once we do that, then we can take care of our families, we can take care of our business. I think ourselves is where we need to start with that. And I think really most of the other things we really fret over, but in the scheme of things, I'm not sure that they necessitate that amount of fretting over.
I think you're so right. And one of the things that that I believe this world of technology has given us, I'm going to kind of pull from the world of the our growth hacker friends who talk about minimally viable products. So one of the things that I do when I'm trying to get through something and do this balancing thing you're talking about is, what is the bare minimum I need to take something live?
That's a really good idea. So to me, you have to separate the nice to have from the must have. So the must haves go in your minimally viable, whatever it is, product, project, outcome. And then you get it out there. So you haven't become paralyzed, so you can't make progress. Now you've got something out there. Now you can iterate. So that to me is the ultimate. And you iterate based on real life customers, real life partners, real data. So to me, that fact that you can get something out there quickly and constantly improve it, that's dream. And that's what I'm saying is, you could have spent another 3 months waiting until you thought you were ready, which really the definition of perfection is, I don't think we ever made it. So that's a perfect way to approach it, in my opinion, which is get it out there, make sure you can stand behind it before you put it out there. You're going to be proud to put your name on it, and then iterate and improve. And just, that's back to that, just keep moving. Don't let perfection prevent you from any progress.
So do you think the technology makes it easier for us or more difficult to go from perfection to good enough?
I think technology makes it harder for us to disconnect. And so there's always something that will be pulling our attention. I mean, there's email 24 hours a day, there's Twitter, there's Facebook, there's LinkedIn. So I think it takes more discipline for us to really focus our time and to balance where we need to. But on the other hand, I do think technology does give us a lot of tools to make us more productive, to get more customer feedback, to figure out the customer experience. So I think that technology can be this double edge, or this paradox, where used well, I think it can really be a good tool.
I have to agree with that. It took me a while coming from the world of traditional marketing, where a printed piece had to be perfect because you were printing tens of thousands of them.
That's right.
And to me, technology was so freeing because I could publish something. Oh, there's a typo. I can go in there and fix that.
That's right.
There are things you can fix, and that makes it really nice. So what tips do you have for other folks? And I know our audience has a lot of recovering perfectionists in it. What kind of tips, is there a process that you would share that maybe you use with your client companies?
Well, I think the biggest tip I have is I think a lot of us are leaders and we have teams that work with us. I think to me, the biggest tip is be careful about the signals you send to your team. Because if you're sending a signal that I expect perfection, you're going to paralyze your team. You're going to add stress. You're going to add anxiety. They're not going to want to try anything because of fear of failure or fear of not living up to your expectations. So I think the first tip is to be self-reflective and understand, are you building a team culture where you can have these conversations about what is good enough? What is that minimally viable product? How can we move faster? How can we deliver a product that we're all proud of? So having those kinds of conversations where you make it safe to fail, safe to iterate, safe to try new things, that's where you're going to get real growth and innovation for the individuals on your team as well as for your business. So I think if you are causing that level of anxiety, I think you need to step back and realize that that might not be healthy. I think you have to also realize that not everybody is like you. Not everybody is a perfectionist. And that's what makes your team interesting, is because you've got a mix of different personalities and experiences and all sorts of ideas. So to embrace that some people will be more comfortable with good enough and some people will be less comfortable with good enough. And then I think it's just to have this open dialogue, whether it's with yourself, your mentors, your family, your friends. But you have, I think we all have a responsibility to build our own support system that tells us when we're going over the top, when we need to pull back. How do we have the conversation about what could good enough look like? And then in addition to building that support system, I think we also need to be that support system when we see a friend or a colleague or a family member that's really kind of spinning their wheels, and we think that maybe a break, a rest, pick their heads up might be a good time to ask the question. So let's talk about what good enough means and how can we all be proud of putting the good enough stamp on this and moving forward. So I think it's build a support system, be a support system, be self-reflective, and understand that it's not a one answer. It's always going to be situational in terms of how quickly you have to move, how perfect your product has to be, but get comfortable practicing so we can all get more comfortable with accepting a good enough outcome.
All right, so I've got to ask the question that's the flip side of that. Let's say you're someone like me and is really committed. Maybe you've got a system and a process for moving forward, right? Not perfect, but definitely worth something to pursue, right? To go ahead and move forward. How do you talk to a perfectionist boss and get them off of their micromanaging?
That's a really good question. I find, again, it's a conversation. One thing always when you talk to a boss is to talk about a couple of suggestions. So here's what I have determined are the priorities. Do you agree? So you're not saying, here's my problem, let me throw it at you for you to solve. You're coming up with a suggestion, a solution, and you're giving them a chance to have a dialogue, because once somebody is in a dialogue with you, then we can agree. You now have their buy-in, plus you have they're part of the problem solving with you. So to me, I think with the manager, it's always to find out what does the manager need, so they're comfortable, so they don't get surprises, so they can trust you. And whenever there's an issue, I think it's to raise it in terms of, here's what I see, here's how I recommend it, do you see it the same way? So I think the key is always to try to engage in a conversation, whether it's about this or whether it's about really anything else with your manager.
I think that's so smart. And, just to be clear, I know I asked the question about managers, but, if you're a business owner, your boss is your client. Right. So I just want to make clear that I think this stands true, whether you're talking, you're just another human being, you have to be in conversation.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So what haven't I asked, or what haven't we discussed that you think is really important for folks to know?
I think it's just really about giving yourself permission. I think, again, I'll say, for perfectionists want to be perfect. And so to me, I think it really is a matter of redefining what the outcome is. Is the outcome to get a product to market, to get a customer sale? Define what that outcome is and determine how you can get there, and give yourself and others around you the permission to move faster, to give it a try, to get something out there, and then work on improvement versus waiting and waiting and waiting until you think you might be there just to find that maybe you missed something. So to me, I think it's about being kind to ourselves and giving ourselves the permission to try to embrace the new concept of good enough.
That's fantastic, Carrie. Thank you so much for being with us today. I can't wait to just expand this whole conversation on the chat.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.